I still remember the first time I saw Elena. Her hands were wrapped around a steaming mug of cider, and she looked like she had absolutely no idea what she was doing in a place like Ridge Run. It was one of those crisp October afternoons, and the air smelled like wood smoke and sugar-glazed kettle corn. She was shivering beside a candle booth, wearing one of those too thin scarves that screamed Denver transplant trying to be rustic. My name's Caleb. I'm 34, and I've lived in Pine Hollow, Colorado my whole life. Small town, big mountains, quiet. I'm an EMT for the county, and I was on my break from festival duty when I spotted her, this woman with wind-tangled hair and a furrowed brow, staring like the candles might come to life and bite her. You look like you're about 5 seconds away from setting something on fire, I said, offering a gloved hand and a half-smile. She jumped, then laughed awkwardly. That obvious, huh? Only to the trained eye. I wiggled my fingers in my gloves. These are clean, I swear. Want them? You look frozen. She hesitated, then took them with a grateful sigh. Thanks. I didn't realize it got this cold in October. This is warm for October, I said, grinning. Welcome to the Ridge Run Festival. Population, sweaters, and overpriced pottery. She smiled. I'm Elena, by the way. We ended up walking the length of the festival together, cider in hand, weaving between booths of hand-woven blankets and odd-shaped jams with names like Sasquatch Spice and Fireberry Dream. I learned she'd just taken a job at the Pine Hollow Historical Archive. Library science background. Used to city life. Couldn't cook to save her life, but had a weird obsession with mid-90s indie movies and trivia no one else cared about. Name one movie better than Gummo, she dared me while we sampled goat cheese on crackers from a lady in a prairie dress. Literally any other movie ever made, I shot back, and she laughed so hard she nearly spilled her cider. I told her about my job, about hauling tourists off ski trails in winter and patching up farmers who insisted on climbing ladders in cowboy boots. I mentioned the cabin I'd bought just outside town, nothing fancy but quiet, with a view of the mountains. She tilted her head like she could see it already. 6 months later, she moved in. It felt fast, maybe too fast, but there was something magnetic about her. The way she brought books into every room, how she narrated her thoughts when she thought no one was listening. She made lists for everything, groceries, goals, trivia to look up later. I never met someone who could turn a lazy Sunday into a scavenger hunt for obscure facts. We settled into our little cabin like we'd been doing it for years. She took the back room as her reading nook. I added hooks for her scarves. We bought mismatched mugs from local thrift stores and made a game out of never using the same one twice. Looking back, I can see how it started too perfect, too easy. But back then, it just felt like I had finally found my person. We'd been living together for about a year when Elena first mentioned Lucas. It was a quiet evening, snow outside, stew simmering on the stove, and she was sitting cross-legged on the floor with a stack of old photo albums she'd been sorting through. I was fixing a leg on a kitchen chair when she held up a picture and said, almost too casually, "That's from when I was in Chile." Lucas took it. I didn't know who Lucas was then, but I didn't let it show. Friend? She paused, her hand hovering just a second too long over the photo. Ex. We were together a long time. College to almost 30. I looked up, waiting for more. We grew apart, she said, flipping the page. He wanted to keep traveling. I wanted something grounded. No drama, just over. I nodded. That sounded reasonable. Adult. Clean. Still, I noticed there weren't any other pictures of him in her boxes. She kept all kinds of mementos, postcards, ticket stubs, weird pressed flowers, and old books, but Lucas was practically invisible. At the time, I thought maybe that meant she was really over him. 2 years after we met, we got married. Small mountainside ceremony, just 30 people, friends, co-workers, a few scattered relatives. She wore a deep green dress instead of white. Said she wanted to look like the forest. I wore a suit that didn't quite fit right and boots because no way was I wearing dress shoes on a hiking trail. I remember thinking, this is it. I've made it. I found someone who gets me. She tucked wildflowers behind her ears and promised me forever in a voice that trembled just a little. I thought it was emotion. I told myself it was emotion. And I ignored the rest. Like how she flinched a little when her old college roommate asked, "You and Lucas don't talk at all anymore?" Or how she'd started taking long walks alone, always with a camera she hadn't touched in years. She said it helped her reset. I figured that made sense. After all, she used to do archival work. She loved cataloging things. But sometimes, I'd catch her staring at old pictures she never shared with me. Not ones from our wedding or our hikes, other ones. ones I didn't recognize. Her expression wasn't sad, exactly. More like, far away. One time I joked, "You've got a secret past life I don't know about?" She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Everyone does," she said. I laughed it off then. Thought maybe she was just being reflective, like people get when they're putting roots down. I didn't push. I never wanted to be that guy who grilled his wife about her past. Besides, everything felt good. We hosted dinner parties. She brought me lunch at work. We binged weird documentaries and made plans to adopt a dog. Still, every now and then, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and find her lying there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling like she was listening for something far away. And I'd tell myself not to ask. The change started slow, like how you don't notice summer fading until you realize it's dark by dinner. Elena stopped humming around the house. That was the first thing. She used to hum while folding laundry, while brushing her teeth, even while watering the ferns on the windowsill. But one morning I realized it was just quiet. And it stayed that way. She'd been working more hours at the archive, she said. Some special grant project? Old letters from a mining family, or maybe a catalog of 19th century maps. I couldn't keep it straight. I'd ask about her day, and she'd say things like, "Nothing exciting," or "just dusty papers and coffee." Sometimes she wouldn't say anything at all. I tried not to overthink it. People get busy. So I made plans. I booked us a weekend getaway to a hot springs cabin near Pagosa Springs. I found a candlelit restaurant, packed her favorite tea, even brought her camera, hoping maybe the old spark would come back. She forgot the whole bag in the trunk. Barely touched her food. Took 2 pictures of moss on a rock, not even of us. Back home, she stayed glued to her phone, always quick to turn the screen face down when I walked by. I joked one night, "Who's your secret boyfriend? Hope he's helping you with the mortgage." She smiled without looking up. "You're so dramatic." I tried again. I brought home a candle that smelled like cider and cloves, the kind she used to love. Set it on the table with 2 plates of takeout and that old indie film she made me watch when we first started dating. She nodded off halfway through the movie, barely touched her food. When I blew out the candle, she didn't even notice. Then Bree came to visit. Bree was Elena's childhood friend, the type who brought expensive wine and gossiped like it was a competitive sport. We sat on the porch with drinks, watching the sun dip behind the trees, when Bree mentioned him. "So, did Lucas really buy a riverboat?" she asked, like it was the most normal question in the world. Elena blinked. "What?" Bree giggled. "You didn't see? He posted pictures, something about Lyon, France. It's beautiful." I didn't say anything, just listened. Bree kept going. "He's got that gallery show in Milan next month, too. Remember when we thought he'd end up living in his van forever?" Elena laughed, but it sounded tight. "Yeah, well, people change." That night, I woke up around 1 a.m. and walked into the kitchen for water. The hallway light was on. I peeked in. Elena was sitting at the table, phone in her hand, eyes locked on the screen. I cleared my throat, and she startled like I'd caught her sneaking out. "Couldn't sleep," she said. I nodded. "What you looking at?" She turned the phone face down. "Just reading stuff." I walked past her, gave her shoulder a light squeeze. "Everything okay?" "Of course." She smiled, that same tight smile she gave Bree. And then, with a little laugh that didn't match her eyes, she added, "I promise I'm not running off to France." I forced a laugh, too. But something in my gut told me I wasn't the one she was trying to convince. It was a Tuesday when it all cracked open. I remember because Tuesdays were Elena's late nights at the archive. She always came home tired, smelling faintly of paper dust and the lavender lotion she kept in her desk drawer. That morning, she'd kiss me goodbye and said, "Don't wait up, manuscript day." But around 4 in the afternoon, I got a call from Bree. "Hey, is Elena okay?" she asked, voice casual but with an edge. She never showed for our coffee date. I blinked. "Coffee?" "Yeah. We were supposed to meet at that little place by the bookstore. 2 o'clock. I even texted her when I got there, but no reply. I felt my chest tighten. She told me she'd be stuck at the archive all day. There was a pause on the line. "Oh," Bree said finally. "Maybe something came up." "Yeah," I said, already not believing it. "Maybe." That night, when Elena came through the door just after 7, she looked too put together. Her hair was brushed, makeup still intact. Normally on her long days, she came home looking wilted, shoes in hand, hair pinned up in frustration. Tonight, she looked fresh, composed. I didn't say anything at first, just handed her a glass of water, watched her kick off her boots. "How was manuscript day?" I asked, keeping my voice even. She yawned. Exhausting. I was buried in folders all afternoon. Oh yeah. I leaned against the kitchen counter. Bree said she waited for you at the cafe. Elena froze, just for a second. Not enough for a stranger to notice. But I knew her. Oh, God, I forgot, she said, waving her hand like it was nothing. I meant to reschedule, but it slipped my mind. Got pulled into a last-minute inventory review. I nodded slowly. Right. Makes sense. She walked past me to hang her coat. I stood there, watching the weight of the lie settle into the air between us like dust. The next morning, after she left for work, I called the archive. A woman named Shelley answered. Hi, this is Caleb Martin. My wife Elena works there. I was just checking in. She mentioned staying late yesterday for manuscript work. Oh, Shelley said, cheerful. She actually left early yesterday. Around 1, I think. Said she had a personal errand. Didn't say what. I thanked her and hung up. For a minute, I just sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wall. I didn't feel angry. Not yet. Just stunned. Like I was outside my body, watching the pieces of something I thought was solid start to fall apart. That night, I didn't bring it up. I couldn't. The words sat in my throat like stones. But when she kissed me goodnight, I didn't kiss her back. And I think she noticed. Because for the first time in months, she reached for my hand under the covers. And I didn't move. The call came just after 9 on a Sunday morning. I was pulling breakfast out of the oven, scrambled eggs, toast, turkey sausage, something Elena used to love before everything turned cold between us. The pan was still in my hand when my phone rang. It was her. Hysterical. Caleb, she choked out. It's Lucas. He fell. Hiking accident. They're airlifting him to Denver General. My stomach dropped. What? I have to go, she sobbed. I can't lose him again. Those words hit me like a fist. Again. Elena, what do you mean? I need you to drive me, she blurted. Please. I can't do this alone. Please, Caleb. I stood frozen for a second, eggs cooling on the stove, her voice a crackling mess in my ear. Okay, I heard myself say. I'll be there in 5. She was waiting on the porch when I pulled up, still in her robe, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Her eyes were red, hair unbrushed. She didn't look at me when she climbed into the passenger seat. We drove in silence for a while. The mountain road blurred past, and I focused on keeping my hands steady on the wheel. Then, somewhere just past Black Canyon, she broke. I still love him, she whispered. I didn't say anything. She looked over, eyes wet and wild. I didn't mean to. It just happened. We started emailing a few months ago. I swear it was just talking at first. I didn't think. You didn't think what? My voice cracked. That it would feel like this, she said. I thought I was just remembering. But when I heard he got hurt, Caleb, something snapped. I couldn't breathe. I kept my eyes on the road. My knuckles were white against the steering wheel. So all this time, I said slowly, you've been with me, but wanting him. No, she said quickly. Not wanting. Just wondering. He represented something. A part of me I thought I let go of. I laughed, short and bitter. Well, guess you found her again. She went quiet. Her face turned toward the window like she couldn't stand to look at me. When we reached the hospital, she unbuckled her seatbelt before I'd even stopped the car. Thank you, she said, breathless. I watched her run across the parking lot, hair flying behind her, and vanish through the sliding glass doors without even looking back. I sat there in the driver's seat for a long time, the engine ticking as it cooled, the smell of her perfume still clinging to the passenger seat. Inside those walls, she was with him. And out here, in the car, I was alone. All the little lies, the phone turned face down, the forgotten coffee dates, the quiet dinners, they all made sense now. They weren't random. They were steps, slow and silent, away from me. I didn't go inside. I didn't text her. Didn't wait. I drove back toward Pine Hollow, the mountains blurring behind me like an old photograph fading in the sun. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the eggs were still sitting on the stove. Cold, shrinking into themselves. I threw them away, sat down on the edge of the couch, and I cried for the first time in years. Not because she loved someone else, but because she left so easily. I packed in under an hour. Didn't take much, some clothes, my hiking boots, my EMT gear, the battered book of film trivia Elena gave me during our first Christmas together. The furniture stayed. So did the framed wedding photo on the hallway wall. I left it untouched, glass cracked from when it fell a few weeks back during a windstorm. Seemed fitting. Marcus lived about 20 minutes down the mountain in a ranch-style house just outside of Gunnison. We'd served together overseas, and he always said I had a standing invitation if I ever needed a break from life. I never thought I'd cash it in. Jesus, he said when he opened the door and saw me on the porch with 2 duffel bags. Tell me this isn't what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like. He didn't ask questions. Just stepped aside and pointed toward the spare room. I didn't cry that night. I didn't talk. I just lay on the guest bed staring at the ceiling fan, waiting for sleep that never came. The next morning, the messages started. Missed call. Elena. Missed call. Again. Voicemail. Caleb, please. I didn't mean what I said. I was in shock. I wasn't thinking clearly. Text. I love you. Not him. Please, talk to me. I didn't reply. By mid-afternoon, she was calling every hour. Marcus handed me a beer around 6 and said, "You sure you don't want to block her?" I shook my head. Not yet. Some part of me wanted to hear it, not to give her a chance, but to know how far she'd go. How she'd twist the truth. How she'd try to rewrite what she'd already said. That night, I sat on the edge of Marcus's porch in the dark and listened to one of the voicemails. Caleb, please. You don't understand. I wasn't saying I chose Lucas. I panicked. I was scared. Seeing him like that, it brought everything back. But it didn't mean I stopped loving you. She sounded wrecked. Raw. Real. Even. But all I could hear was the car ride. I can't lose him again. That wasn't panic. That was clarity. So the next morning, I drove back to the cabin just once to leave a note. I walked through the door one last time. The place felt hollow. The air was stale, and the coffee pot was half full on the counter. She hadn't been back yet. I took one of our old sticky notes, the kind she used for grocery lists and love notes, and stuck it on the mantel above the fireplace. For words. That's all. He can have you now. I didn't slam the door when I left. Didn't burn anything. Didn't cry. I just walked out. For good. And as I drove away, my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. Another apology. I didn't listen to it. I just powered the phone off and rolled down the window. For the first time in weeks, I breathed. A week later, I met Clara for coffee. She texted me the day after I left the note, saying, I know you probably don't want to hear from anyone connected to Elena right now, but please, just coffee. 10 minutes. No drama. Clara was Elena's younger sister by 4 years. They were close, but different. Where Elena was composed and careful with her words, Clara was blunt and a little scattered, like she had too many thoughts in her head at once. I liked her from the beginning. We met at a little cafe near the college, one of those places that sold overpriced chai lattes and had mismatched chairs. She looked nervous when I walked in, fidgeting with her sleeve. Her coffee sat untouched in front of her. Thanks for coming, she said as I sat down. I'm not here to change anything, I said, leveling my voice. If this is about taking Elena back. No. God, no. She shook her head quickly. That's not what this is. She paused, then leaned forward. I just thought you deserved some clarity. Some truth. I nodded slowly. Go ahead. She and Lucas started talking again last winter. She began. Email, mostly. Then texts. At first it was just catching up. He sent her a photo he took in Iceland, I think. She replied. And it snowballed. I clenched my jaw. Did she ever tell you about it? Bits and pieces. She said it made her feel nostalgic. Like she was remembering a version of herself that she missed. Clara sighed. She swore it wasn't physical. Not even flirty at first. Just familiar. Comfortable. That's worse, I said quietly. She rebuilt a life with him in her head while she was sharing a bed with me. Clara didn't argue. She just nodded. She told me she was confused. That Lucas brought back this image of freedom, adventure. He was her past, the part that didn't have bills or cold mornings or dishes in the sink. I laughed bitterly. And I'm what? The part with the sink full of reality? Clara looked down. She regrets it. All of it. Regret isn't a refund, I muttered. She said she never planned to act on it. That it was just thoughts. Emails. Feelings. But then the accident happened, and it was like everything came rushing back at once. I stayed quiet for a moment. The cafe noise buzzed around us, silverware clinking, a baby crying near the door, baristas yelling orders. It all felt far away. She told me she loved him, I said finally. In the car. I didn't imagine that. You didn't, Clara said. She told me that too. I leaned back in my chair, the ache settling deeper. Then that's it. There's nothing left to talk about. Clara looked like she wanted to say more but didn't. She just nodded, slowly. For what it's worth, she said softly, I think you were the one who really loved her. I didn't answer. Just stood up, thanked her, and left a 5 on the table. Some truths don't change the outcome. They just confirm you were right to walk away. The mediator's office was tucked behind a dentist clinic in downtown Gunnison. Sterile walls, vinyl chairs, one dying plant by the window that looked like it gave up months ago. Fitting, I thought. The place reeked of endings. Elena was already sitting inside when I walked in. She looked smaller than I remembered. Pale, hair pulled back in a tight knot, like she was holding herself together by the roots. A manila folder sat neatly in front of her. She didn't look up until I sat down across the table. Hi, she said quietly. I nodded. Hey. The mediator, a woman in her 50s with a polite smile and a voice that tried too hard to sound neutral, welcomed us, laid out the process, and handed us a list of joint assets. Cabin, furniture, shared bank account, a few small investments. The silence between us was louder than anything on the page. I don't want the house, Elena said suddenly. You can keep it. I don't think I could stay there anyway. I didn't respond right away. Just kept my eyes on the list. Okay, I finally said. We went through the rest like it was a business deal. I offered to close the shared account and split it evenly. She agreed. We both signed. Then, just as the mediator was about to wrap it up, Elena spoke again. Caleb, can we? She glanced at the woman. Could we have a minute? Alone. The mediator gave a tight smile and stood. I'll give you two some space. As the door closed behind her, Elena leaned forward, her voice trembling. I never meant to hurt you. I kept my face still. You did, though. I know, she said. I panicked. Everything with Lucas, it brought back this version of me I thought I lost. But it wasn't about him. It was about who I used to be, who I thought I needed to be again. I crossed my arms. Then why run to him? Why not to me? Because you knew the real me, she whispered. The one who leaves dishes in the sink. The one who doesn't finish books. Lucas only ever knew the dream version. I shook my head. You still chose him in that moment. You asked me to drive you to him. Tears filled her eyes. I didn't know what else to do. I was scared. Scared of what? That I'd already ruined everything, she said, her voice breaking. And I was right. I sat in silence, watching the woman I used to love fall apart across the table, and felt nothing. Not anger. Not pity. Just a hollow clarity. You made your choice, I said calmly. Now I'm making mine. She reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. I'm not the man you run to when your past gets loud, I said. I was your husband, and you left me in a hospital parking lot like I was a rideshare driver. She flinched. I loved you, Elena. Fully. Honestly. But I don't trust you anymore. And without trust, there's nothing left. She broke, then shoulders shaking, a hand over her mouth to muffle the sob. I stood up. The mediator peeked in and took her seat again, clearing her throat gently. I signed the final line. Elena was still crying when I walked out, but I didn't look back. The letter arrived a week after we signed the papers. Not an email, not a text. A real, handwritten letter on thick, cream-colored paper, the kind Elena used for birthday cards and thank you notes. Her handwriting was unmistakable. Small, neat, slightly slanted to the left. The envelope just said Caleb in blue ink. I stood in Marcus's kitchen holding it for a long minute before I opened it. No return address. No sticker seal. Just folded paper and whatever was left of what she hadn't said to my face. Caleb, I don't know if you'll read this. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. I just needed to say a few things without a mediator between us, without a script, without time limits. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. That's not a line. That's the truth. I realize now that I was never haunted by Lucas. I was haunted by who I used to be when I was with him. I confused nostalgia with love. I thought if I could tap into that part of my life again, I'd somehow be whole. But I was wrong. You didn't deserve what I did to you. You didn't deserve the silence, the lies, the car ride that should never have happened. I said I still loved him because, in that panicked moment, I was trying to feel something that made sense. But it wasn't love. It was memory. Real love was Sunday mornings with you. It was how you remembered I liked lemon in my tea, or the way you knew I needed space when I got quiet. It was your gloves that first day at Ridge Run. It was every time you let me be messy and unsure and still loved me anyway. You were my future, Caleb. I just didn't see it clearly until I destroyed it. I'm not asking for anything. Not forgiveness. Not another chance. I just wanted you to know that you were never the problem. I was. Asterisk. It wasn't a long letter. Just 2 pages. When I finished reading it, I folded it back along the creases, slid it into the envelope, and tucked it into the back of my journal, the one I used to keep track of shift rotations and hiking routes. I didn't burn it, didn't tear it up, but I didn't reply. She meant every word. I could feel it. But sincerity after betrayal is like rain after the harvest's already dead. It comes too late to save anything. That same day, I filed the final divorce documents at the courthouse and turned in my transfer request with the county EMS office. There was an opening in Flathead County, Montana, a smaller team, longer shifts, colder mornings. It sounded perfect. I signed the paperwork and walked out into the sunlight. Later that week, I adopted a rescue dog, some mutt with one ear flopped over and a tail that wagged crooked. I named him Ridge. Not after her. After where I began. Montana's cold hit's different. It's not the kind that just bites your fingers. It settles deep, in your bones, like it's trying to see what you're made of. But I didn't mind. That first winter in Flathead County, I found myself breathing easier than I had in months. The new team welcomed me without asking too many questions. I pulled early morning shifts, the ones nobody wanted, and didn't say much outside of what was needed. They called me Colorado, not Caleb, and I let them. It felt safer that way. Ridge, my mutt of a shadow, took to the trails like he'd been born for them. Every morning before my shift, we'd hike just past the edge of town, boots crunching in the snow, his tail wagging like a metronome. He didn't care about where I'd come from. He didn't ask why I sometimes stopped in the middle of the trail and stared out into the trees like I was waiting for something that wasn't coming. One day in late January, I passed a couple down by the river, maybe early 20s, all bundled up and laughing like the cold didn't matter. The girl tossed a snowball and missed by a mile. The guy doubled over laughing, then pulled her close like the world didn't exist beyond that moment. I felt it hit me. Not grief, not anger. Just stillness. I didn't envy them. I didn't ache for what I lost. I just watched. And for the first time in a long while, I realized I wasn't carrying the weight of that car ride anymore. Or the voicemail apologies. Or the letter in the back of my journal. It was still there, of course. Some things don't leave you. But it wasn't driving me. It wasn't steering the wheel anymore. That night, I sat on my porch with Ridge curled at my feet, watching the snow fall under the porch light. There was no text waiting, no call I didn't want to answer, no voice in my head asking what I could have done differently. Just me, a dog, and the smell of pine in the air. I wasn't healed. Not completely. But I was far enough from the betrayal to finally see it for what it was. Not the end of me, but the end of an illusion. And every morning after that, with fresh tracks in the snow and my breath visible in the dawn, I took one more step forward.